What's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast. Subscribe to Saturday Down South on YouTube. I'm Connor O'Gara. Will, we are back in our normal digs, or I guess I'm back in my normal digs, not in Chicago, back in Orlando. You are where you were last pod for the emergency pod that we did on Brian Kelly's firing. Everybody should go listen to that. That came out on Monday. We recapped everything related to Brian Kelly, LSU. Well, before we get to all things Week 10, 6 games in the SEC, 3 sort of good games, and then 3 just kind of for the sickos. Should we maybe, I don't know, like update people on our draft of SEC teams that you, Adam Spencer, and I did together?
You're cooking us, aren't you?
What's cooking? What do the kids say is cooking these days?
Are we getting doubled up? Are we getting boat raced? Am I Brian Kelly and you're Texas A&M?
Yeah, you are. Just thought I'd bring this up. Just in case people needed a little refresher. I know we said we'd probably like update people at the midway point of the season. We threw out the idea in this August pod that we did that we could trade for the vacant team because we each drafted 5 teams and there was going to be a vacant team. I don't think anybody is going to be trading one of their teams in for Kentucky. I don't think that'll be the case. Unless you want to speak now. I mean, you have the floor if you would like to at this point. Now I'm going to recap the teams and then I'll get to the records just a second here. But I'll give you this platform if you want to trade for Kentucky right now. I'm putting you on the spot here. Is that something you'd be interested in or no?
Well, Kentucky did just post a graphic, freshman quarterback, 5 touchdown passes, update your record books. So, no, I'm not even really still remotely considering that, I don't think.
One of the things that bothers me is when people don't say redshirt freshman and they just say freshman. When you watch the Manziel doc on Netflix, they kept saying over and over and over again, first freshman win a Heisman. All right, so we're just going to ignore the redshirt part. We're just going to ignore Johnny Manziel's lost redshirt year here. We're just going to pretend that like spending a year on the sideline learning the Cliff Kingsbury offense just didn't happen at all. He just like was playing high school football. He should have been at his high school prom, or his high school homecoming dance. I don't like that. So it's
devil's advocate though. Imagine explaining what a red shirt is to just a regular person. Like if they just knew nothing about football, it's like, well, like you're on the team and you can go to the little meetings, but you can't play. And if you do play, you got to take this magical shirt off. So like I get it from a documentary standpoint, but you're right. Like from official record keeping, they got to keep that straight.
Not hard. He played in less than 4 games. That's it. 1 sentence. Done. Reader's Digest version. We did it. Anyway, let's recap the teams and the records.
I love the random stuff that gets you fired up.
It's dumb. It's really dumb. All right. So this is the draft and how it played out. Adam took Texas, LSU, Florida, Tennessee, and Mississippi State. His record is
he's cooked.
Yeah, but you're more cooked. His record is 24-15. You took, and this is in order of the teams that you picked: Alabama, South Carolina, Mizzou, Auburn, Arkansas. You are more cooked at 22-18.
Well, I'm more cooked for now, but I do have 2 good teams.
Yeah, you do have the team that is favored maybe to win an SEC championship right now, Alabama. So that's good. Like that's all.
I was counting Mizzou as a good team. I'm not sure after Saturday with their quarterback situation they're a good team, but they're at least not like Arkansas. So I got to count the positives here.
Yeah, you have one really good team and then a team that could still be good, but it's on its 3rd string quarterback. So like, who knows really at this point? And then I have it. Just we'll get through this here. I had Georgia, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, and Vandy, and I am currently 34-5.
We can just go ahead and call this one. If your last pick was Vandy, I think we might be turn on the lights.
When your last pick is 7-1, you're probably not losing. You're probably not. And I actually really debated it too. I actually debated if I wanted to go Arkansas. And boy, howdy, did that make a big difference for me. I don't know that I'm going to end up winning the SEC championship, but I do like the fact that I have 3 teams that are very much in contention for it with Georgia, Ole Miss, Texas A&M. And I think by the look of it, you and Adam each have 1 team apiece there. So I at least even feel good about that as well. But yet to be determined, we will update the people maybe at the end of the regular season or something like that, just in case, things things change. But I just wanted to make sure that people knew just kind of where we stood in this draft that we did back in August.
Not great, but well, I feel like you're hoarding the wealth. Me and Adam need to unionize and get our resources together. We could do some group economics, all right?
I got lucky. I knew that I was going to feel really good about getting Ole Miss and A&M with my second and third picks. Like that, when that got back to me in the snake, I felt okay. We're gonna have a real chance here. I did not think to this point of the season they would be a combined 15-1. That's fueling me very much.
Ryan Grubb is saving me. So
yeah. Look,
it's the funniest situation.
That your draft started off looking like, hey, this could be a disaster when Bama has the week 1 game that it does, and at least you have that. And if Bama wins a national championship, then who knows? We'll see. That would be exactly what you would want, right?
Exactly, right? I'm the real winner if Bama wins again.
This is true. All right. We have a great pod ahead to preview week 10. Chris Doering coming up in a bit to talk all things cocktail party, the Florida vacancy, SEC receivers, and then we will have Lad of the Week. But first, a quick word from our friends at Dabble. Guys, been talking about Dabble for a while now. If you are into daily fantasy, Dabble is the place to do it. It's one of the newest and best apps in the DFS space. They've wasted no time making a name for themselves. The social function is second to none. They offer a wide variety of sports making picks, including college football, NFL. We've got NBA going on. Use promo code SDS2 when you sign up today. Receive $25 in bonus cash. No deposit required. Again, that is promo code SDS2 for $25 in bonus cash, courtesy of the good folks at Dabble. Will, week 10, we're not going to talk about the fact that it's a double-digit week now in college football. We still have like 2.5 months, more than 2.5 months until we determine a national champion. So we will not pretend that it is not on our side. It is still very much on our side.
Time is on my side, as it is, of course, an LSU bye week, the best time of the year.
It is the best time of the year, Will, because you don't have to have your heart broken this weekend, and that's a win. That is a massive, massive win. I think even Bama fans at this point of the year are like, oh, exhale, bye week. It's been a very tough, emotionally draining stretch, and it's been a successful one. But I think even Bama fans are looking up going, oh, man, like felt like an eternity for that bye week to get here.
Yeah, I feel like on both sides of that game, it's like Alabama is getting screamed at by Kalen DeBoer right now, and LSU's like partying because they don't have to deal with Brian Kelly. So that's going to be a very fun game.
Yes, definitely. All right, number 9, Vandy. Number 20, Texas. Texas is a 2.5 point favorite. The over-under I have is 0.5 Arch Manning snaps. Yeah, we're recording this on Wednesday morning like we always do. And as they always do, injury reports come out Wednesday night. He is in concussion protocol after getting knocked out late on that hit in the Mississippi State game. Maybe that spread suggests that he'll play, or maybe that spread suggests, as Matt Hayes wrote for USA Today, that Matthew Caldwell will be just fine, and maybe the Texas offense will actually be better if he plays. Interpret that how you will.
Arch Manning or the field, with the field having better odds.
Yeah. Will, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to Google Matthew Caldwell right now. Do this on the spot. Anybody wants to play along at home, you can do this as well. Just in case he plays. Just in case. We want to, be aware of these things going in. But Matthew Caldwell looks like someone who could have played a quarterback in Friday Night Lights or something.
That's exactly what I was thinking. He looks like one of those Netflix show quarterbacks where they were kind of like struggling financially and they just greenlit all these random shows. He's like the one that would teach you the lesson like, hey, winning's not everything, all right?
Yes. Matthew Caldwell has a cheesy monologue in some teen show wherein they definitely oversimplify the elements of high school football. That is what Matthew Caldwell looks like he was built to do. Auburn High School, by the way. Texas is his 4th school. 4 career starts. Maybe he gets a 5th. I'm not going to go full Matt Hayes. I won't go full Matt Hayes and say this, but I do wonder if it matters who starts a quarterback for Texas from this standpoint. I just assume that Texas is going to be staring at a halftime deficit, Will. At this point, just don't be surprised by it. Expect the offense to move slowly. We won't even look at some of the struggles that they had in those 3 non-conference home games. Let's just look at the 5 games against power conference teams this year. 4 halftime deficits. They trailed 7-0 at Ohio State. They trailed 19-7 at Florida. They trailed 6-3 in the Red River game, Red River shootout. I just got to say that for the people because the people want to hear it. And then they led 7-0 at Kentucky. And then, oh, by the way, they trailed 24-14 at lowly Mississippi State. In the first half against power conference competition, Texas has been outscored 62-24 with a total of 3 offensive touchdowns. If Texas is going into halftime with a deficit against Vandy, let's not do our shocked face. Let's do our, oh, this is just what Texas does face, because it is the most casual team in college football.
Yeah, absolutely. We kind of hit on this before, which is that, boy, is there probably not a worse team with the SEC to be casual against this Vandy team, because they will take that so personally. Like, I feel like Diego Pavia would be getting mad at the defense for not trying. Like, he would be like, you're in the wrong technique, son. Like, you're supposed to be in that gap. Come try.
Yeah, and the way that I can communicate how casual and how casual Texas is and how uncasual Vandy is, and this is also Texas's first power conference home game of the season. Weird schedule for a weird team. In the first half of these games, Arch Manning does not rank in the top 100 in FBS and quarterback rating. Average 6.6 yards per attempt. That tends to hurt you. In the second half, he's better, 8.7 yards per attempt. Here's the stat you've been looking for, though. When Arch Manning is trailing by 15 plus points, he is number 2 in America with a 186.5 quarterback rating. Saw that play out.
That answers the question then. He takes after Eli.
Very much. Good call. Good call. Yeah, Peyton not as much in those situations, but Eli definitely. Yeah, more of an Eli than a Peyton. Kind of a fitting stat, too, for the most casual team in America. We'll just fall behind by 15 plus, and then we'll play our best brand of football. No big deal. Vandy, though, as we know, not casual. Not casual. It is intentional. In the first half of games, Diego Pavia averages 6.3 yards per carry. He's number 9 in FBS with a 182.7 quarterback rating. Vandy trailed 20-10 at halftime against Virginia Tech. In the first halves of power conference games since then, up 14-7 at South Carolina, tied 14-14 at Bama, up 17-13 against LSU, and then tied 3-3 against Mizzou. All SEC games, 0 halftime deficits for Vandy. They will not play with their food. They might not have a full, complete performance in the first half, but they are not one of these teams that shows up lackadaisical and just like, oh, hey, I guess we're just going to be like rallying all second half in the way that Texas does. They will bring their efficient offense, which is averaging 7.2 yards per play. They will try to take Texas out of any sort of offensive rhythm by picking up third downs, which they do at the 9th best rate in America. I could see Vandy going into the break up 7-3. And then this game turns into a back and forth, a fun back and forth. Both teams get going, but ultimately, Texas can't quite find the same mojo that it had against a worse Mississippi State team. Vandy's pass rush gets to, I think whoever starts at quarterback, I'm just going to assume it's Arch, prevents him from being able to have that late last-ditch drive. I think Vandy wins again. I'm picking Vandy to win by a touchdown for the 3rd consecutive week. They win 24-17, and the 3rd loss that I've been predicting for Texas finally happens.
So by the way these stats are kind of laid out here, I'm to infer, right, that Arch Manning would kind of give them a better chance to win, right? Because we're to assume that Vandy will play well in the first half. And, you give those scores, right, where it's like, they have been a little bit like water. They have been a little bit malleable where it comes to, okay, we're at Bama or we're playing against LSU and their offenses are kind of getting going. We're going to go shot for shot with them. Or, we're playing against Mizzou and it's a ground and pound game and we're not going to try to air the ball out and take too many risks. And so if we're to assume that Vandy plays well in the first half, well, having the best quarterback or the second best quarterback in America when you're trailing could be an asset, right?
But trailing by a lot. And I don't know that Vandy all of a sudden turns it into that type of game. And honestly, in the very few moments in which they've been in a spot like that, it's been an overmatched Virginia Tech squad who, I don't really know if that's kind of a fair thing to say when that game was just so weird the way that it played out with how competitive it felt and all of a sudden how lopsided it felt, and they just could never recover. And South Carolina was trying to overcome that type of deficit with a backup quarterback in Luke Doty. So it a little bit different than what Texas would be looking at if all of a sudden they were down 2 touchdowns to Vandy.
Yeah. I mean, this is a fascinating game for a ton of reasons, right? Where it's, again, you look at Texas, marquee brand, just super expensive roster, a bunch of 5-star talent, but playing below that. And then you just kind of hit on it, right? You were able to get Vandy with the last pick in the draft, where they were seen as kind of a Cinderella story last year. Can they back it up? And we've seen they've gotten, in my mind, significantly better this year. And one thing about Diego Pavia is he can find motivation anywhere. And same thing with this defense. Same with, it feels like this whole team has a culture and they're pulling one direction. So I would anticipate they actually would need to get up to a pretty not just playing it close, not just playing it tied, but a pretty big lead at half to feel safe in this game after what happened to Mississippi State. But that then just goes to show Vandy's not Mississippi State. They could pull off a little bit of the they've been the team, to your point, that's kind of gotten better in the second halves as well. Even though you can talk about their competition, some of those second halves, it's not like they've been, just terrible or come apart down the stretch or anything. They certainly put it on LSU in the second half. They certainly, we could list those other examples. You talk about backup quarterbacks. But that being said, yeah, I like Vandy in a game that is close, feels close, but Vandy controls. I'd say about 27-7.
27-7?
Sorry, 20-27. Let me use new
20 to 27. First of all, winning team first. Winning team first. That we don't put losing team first.
27-20.
27
Those are numbers.
to 20.
Those are scores. That's how scores work.
Scores work. Winning team first. Losing. You want to talk about my pet peeves? That's when I see a graphic that puts the losing team first. I'm like, all right, come on.
I finally give a score. This is what happens. See, guys, this is why.
Dang, 27-7. We buried the lead without. No. All right. I think that makes sense. And here's my point. And I sound really anti-Texas by saying that I think they're going to lose at home to Vandy, who's a top 10 team and very much in contention for the college football playoff. I think Texas has gotten away with not being able to play complete games against lesser teams, obviously. And I think the Oklahoma team that they saw, even they could get away with it on that day. The post John Mateer version of Oklahoma is not a complete team, which we'll get to when we talk about Oklahoma and Tennessee in that matchup. But I don't think you can get away with that against Vandy. I just don't. And that's when this all could finally catch up to Texas. But if they win this game, the odd thing and the thing that will be brought up with that first playoff ranking, which will be next Tuesday, is that Texas will have beaten a pair of teams that were in the top 10 at the time of the matchup. Now, depending on what happens with Oklahoma, maybe, it's both. It depends on where Vandy would fall if they were to lose this game. They wouldn't fall very far if they lost a game like this. But all of a sudden, Vandy is a 2-loss team. And if Texas beats them, and maybe they beat them even by 2 scores, then all of a sudden that changes Texas's projection. So there's obviously a ton on the line. There's been a ton on the line. Texas has been in a spot where it's had to treat each of these post-Florida games like playoff games. You can debate whether or not they actually have done that with the way that they showed up against Kentucky and the way that they showed up against Mississippi State. But still, I just don't expect a full, complete game from Texas. A full, complete game has happened once. Happened against Sam Houston State. Don't think it's realistic to expect it to happen against Vandy.
I, for a second, thought you were going to say Oklahoma. And you were like, Sam Houston State. You're right. You're right. And, I'll say, too, the perception of Vandy is something I'm going to keep hitting on because it's so funny to me. I feel like the national media is just kind of begging Vandy to have a bad loss to just completely knock them out of contention. And we've seen that with the way, their loss was handled, the way that they had to scratch and claw. So from the outside of the SEC looking in, it's like, oh, wow, even Vandy can get this high in the rankings. But in reality, if you kind of track their rankings week to week, they kind of had to scratch and claw to get to where they're at in a way that feels kind of foreign for SEC teams. So I say that to say, every game is super duper duper high stakes for Vandy going forward because they are not able to take that even second loss the way like an Alabama or a Texas was.
I think Vandy will still be able to take that second loss. I think a 10-2 Vandy team with where they're at right now, depending on what it looks like, is getting into the college football playoff. And I like to remind people that 10-2 last year was not an automatic bid because of what happened with Miami, what happened with BYU. Like there is definitely room for interpretation, but I don't think that they would be viewed as much of a setback. Now, you're right, though, in that some of their wins have not aged probably as well as they could have hoped. And that could be working against them somewhat. Like if all of a sudden LSU is a 7-5 team and we're like, wait a minute, and Mizzou, what if Mizzou turns into an 8-4 team and by the end of the regular season, Mizzou ends up looking like their best win? The South Carolina win has already aged poorly for Vandy after at the time it looked like, oh my God, you just went into the top 15 team and blew them out. albeit with the Lenore Sellers injury, but still. That is something that could be working against Vandy, that could be hurting them from a national perception standpoint, that allows kind of that gatekeeping to surface in some ways. I still think a 10-2 Vandy team, with the respect that it's gotten to this point, though, would have the benefit of the doubt in that spot. 9-3, though, I'm not assuming anything for a 9-3 team at this point. All right, number 5, Georgia, 7.5 point favorite against Florida, world's largest outdoor cocktail party. The over/under I have is one Gunnar Stockton interception. That's what he has this year on 200 passing attempts. Kind of lost in the shuffle. If you care about the turnover-worthy play metric from PFF, he's got 6 of those. So there's definitely been opportunities, but he's only taken 8 sacks this year, and he's been pressured on 26.2% of his dropbacks, with just a 13.1 pressure to sack percentage this year, which also bodes pretty well that he's got a 71.4 adjusted completion percentage when under pressure. Those are really solid numbers. And that's just me mentioning that this is someone that I kind of came into the year going, I think when things break down, it's going to be really tough. And I don't know that he's going to be fully in control. We've talked about some of the issues that the Georgia offensive line is working through. Is this receiver room going to be much better? They still have their share of drops, but 10 drops compared to, I think at this point last year, it was like close to 20 or whatever it was, is definitely better and more reliable. And they're making plays after the catch and doing things Gunnar Stockton needs him to do. But I just didn't know that I would feel this way about Gunnar Stockton going into this game when the season began. Kirby Smart seemed to think that Georgia locker room seemed to think that, but he has been someone that you can put in a variety of situations and he can kind of figure it out. And it doesn't mean that he's full on Stetson Bennett V, but he's a lot closer to that than I thought he would be. And I just think that lost in the shuffle of this great group of quarterbacks that we're seeing at the top of the SEC, which is really like kind of 5, 6 deep right now. I think that needs to be mentioned, because Georgia's just kind of hanging around here. And I think that Gunnar Stockton has passed any sort of eye test that Georgia fans could have hoped for.
Yeah, and I was just like looking up some stats to see, because I feel like he is airing it out. I feel like it's not really a dink and duck offense. And I'd say, and if you look at like the yards attempt, yards completion stats, he's about a yard behind Ty Simpson, which means he's not really like, it's not all the swing passes, screen passes, all that. So that's super impressive, because we can imagine the big 4th down throw he had this year. We can imagine him hitting some of those guys down the seams and the way that they're using Branch and stuff like that. So I wanted to pull up a couple of guys to kind of compare that. Aguilar is obviously going to be kind of your best in class at these like range stats per volume, right? But for Stockton, he's kind of right there in that pack, maybe in that next pack of guys in terms of the risks he's taking. And so to have that low of a reception number is super impressive for him. This is not the Jake Fromm of this offense, right? This is a guy who,
I agree.
Taking care of the football, folks, does not mean that you're a game manager. It just means you're running the offense correctly. So I think he's kind of found that perfect balance where he's taking good risks.
Yeah, and there's another difference there too. And I was a Jake Fromm defender, but one of the things Jake Fromm obviously never did was keep the ball and call his own number in the ground game. And Gunnar Stockton's doing that at a rate that no Kirby Smart quarterback has really done, at least starting quarterback. And you talk about some of those downfield numbers, and the question that we had in the first part of the season is, will Gunnar Stockton will he actually be able to stretch the field? And for those that don't have this necessarily or aren't necessarily privy to some of the PFF stuff, like he's 4th in the SEC in adjusted completion percentage on the throws that are 20 yards beyond the line of scrimmage at 51.7%. Like that's really good. Now, he's only got 10 completions in those spots. And so it might not necessarily be obvious that he's performing well, and the efficiency in those spots isn't great. Like he's at 11.1 yards per attempt, which is 10th in the SEC among those qualified quarterbacks. But still, you'll take that. That's fine. Like that's doing the things you need to do in this offense. Like it's never going to look in the same way. It's never going to look like the Tennessee offense when it's humming with the downfield shots that they like to be able to take. And even it's like some of the Jeff Lebby concepts and what they like to do. Like if you just look at the pass attempts, like the downfield pass attempts, Aguilar has 37 of them. That's 3rd in the SEC right now. Arch Manning actually has the most, ironically enough. And I don't necessarily know how much of that is scheme. It feels like Tennessee's a little bit more scheme based, whereas Arch kind of has some of those, like, I'm escaping pressure. screw it. We're going outfield. We're going outfield. We're just going to try and make a play. Like, that's just not necessarily the way that you would expect Gunnar Stockton to kind of operate. And he really hasn't. So I think that's passable. And I just think that needs to be brought up going into a game like this, wherein I think that it's fair to ask some questions about Georgia and whether or not they're going to be able to put their foot on the gas and kind of take it to this Florida team that obviously has not had the year that it hoped for. I came into this year saying I think Florida is going to win this game and pull off an upset. But different set of circumstances, I think, all around than what we thought we'd be talking about with these two teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's obviously still some things to like about Florida. I mean, whose receiver group do you like more in this game?
I'd go Georgia.
Mm-hmm. Because when you factor in tight ends, it's not close, right? But just wide receivers, I think it's a little bit closer.
Bobo's done a good job of getting the tight ends more involved. I think Gunnar Stockton targeting them, especially in the red zone, has been really, really important. It's been an underutilized part of this offense. I think the last 2 years, I shouldn't say last 2 years, last year, but the first year of the post Brock Bowers era. But I don't necessarily think that Florida's receivers are a liability per se. Dallas Wilson kind of coming back to earth a little bit after the breakout opener that he had against Texas and, not been as heavily involved. And what does that look like for Florida? Can they really stretch the field and find those weapons in the passing game? Here's what I think, though. This game last year was so messy from a passing standpoint for Georgia because Carson Beck couldn't get out of his own way. 3 picks in this game. He was a walking interception. It felt like it could have been more, if I'm not mistaken. Like, I don't remember what the turnover-worthy plays were. It felt like it was like 5 or 6.
It was very similar to that Louisville game, where it's like, yeah, on paper you had this many picks, but you had several other picks that were like, by the grace of the football gods, you didn't get a pick here.
Yeah, and also it was the 4th time in 5 games that he had multiple interceptions. So it was kind of like, oh my God, you just assume that when he's dropping back to pass and he's unloading, like he's throwing into coverage or he's just not going to see the field well. And I bring this up because Georgia's margin for error isn't as great as it once was. Like, it's not as great as it was maybe like 2 years ago. And it's weird to look up at Max Olson's stop rate, which I always love looking at that stat and not seeing Georgia in the top 20. It's just weird because forever, I would love to know how many consecutive weeks Georgia was in the top 20 in stop rate. And maybe, I think it was last year when that finally came to an end. But Georgia's 95th in the country in opposing third down conversion rate. That's a problem when you can't when you can't rush the passer. And that's been an issue for this team. It's been very well documented. But Gunnar Stockton's style of play and Mike Bobo's offense has prevented that unit from always being on the field. And that's been important. Like, Georgia's actually pretty good in time of possession, despite the fact that their defense can't seem to get off the field, which usually those two things do not line up with one another. I'm curious what it looks like against a Florida team that, as we'll get to with Doering here in a bit, could have a little bit of that interim coach energy. We're calling it ice. We're not calling it ice. We're working title. We are, however, aware that this team could play like it has nothing to lose. In addition to interim coach energy, I always say never sleep on players trying to put good film out there ahead of portal season. This is the way it works now, where you basically have guys like people always, I think a lot of people kind of assume that, like, oh, you got nothing to play for. Like, guys are just not going to be willing to put max effort out there. The team's disjointed. They're going to fall apart. On the contrary, you essentially are a player in a contract year. Like, that's what this turns into for a lot of these guys. And even if you don't plan on leaving, you'd sure as heck like to be able to get paid more to stay, or try and show that coaching staff I'm worthy of a spot going into spring as kind of a first string guy, or at least having a leg up on the competition, or being able to say to a coaching staff, hey, don't bring in a guy at this spot. I've got you covered. Like, there's still a lot of incentive even after you fire a head coach like Florida has. So it's going to be a strange preamble to a cocktail party. And I was looking up, Will, do you know the last time there was an interim coach in the cocktail party?
I don't think I do, no.
Because I initially was like, wait a minute, McElwain. Oh yeah, McElwain got fired that same day, and I was wondering, like, is there one kind of that I'm just forgetting? 1989, Gary Darnell coached Florida because Galen Hall couldn't stop breaking NCAA rules, forced to resign. Georgia was in its first year of the post Vince Dooley era. won that game for the third consecutive year, 10th win in the cocktail party in the last 12 years to that point. Strange that the 89 game was sandwiched. It sandwiched the end of the Dooley era at Georgia and the start of the Spurrier era at Florida. So like weird the way that kind of ended up. So Florida, this is the spin. The last time you had an interim coach in this game, your best coach in program history showed up a year later. So maybe that'll happen this time too, for all we know.
There he is, Lane
Yeah.
Kiffin.
Like maybe.
Oh, I do want to say really quick to clean that up, because I think this is a perfect juxtaposition of the Georgia defense. And Michael Bratton had this stat about explosive plays allowed. So Georgia's top of the SEC and number 12 in America in plays of 20 plus yards on defense allowed. So they are able to limit explosive plays, which is what Florida is good at. However, I love juxtaposing that with the stat that you just provided with the third down stuff, which is why it feels like Georgia's always on the field. It's not like they're giving up the long shot. It's like they're just consistently giving up 4 or 5 yards. But, you'd probably rather have that than just getting gashed.
Yeah, Chambliss and Ty Simpson both just had a lot of success in those meaningful downs where the guys that are just going to be poised, they're not necessarily going to panic. They're going to be in a good spot. And look, I don't know that DJ Lagway immediately falls into that camp. I will say that when Texas couldn't touch him, he seemed pretty confident and pretty poised. And, that's, again, it's not a given. But in the game that he wasn't sacked and he wasn't fearing for his life, like Cassius Howell is just going to swallow him whole, he looked pretty good. And he looked like a guy that was really confident, knew where his reads were going to be, wasn't afraid to kind of hang in the pocket and stretch and try and stretch the field and take some of those downfield chances. I think you need to try and do that. That's not really bold to come out and say that, but I think if you're Florida, you have to assume that you're going to be able to protect against Georgia. Like you can't assume that, oh my God, we're just going to need to get rid of the ball quickly and trying to control these pass rushers. Make them show that they can actually rush the passer. That seems to make more sense to me. So I can't sit here and say that I expect Florida to truly play spoiler, but I think this one's close. I do. I think Georgia's slow starts. I think Florida's interim coach energy is going to help. And Florida's also, played in one-score games deep into the third quarter and all of its losses this year. And I think that happens again. Play caller Ryan O'Hara, who is not my brother, Ryan O'Gara. Yeah, that's right. One letter difference between Ryan O'Hara, Florida's first-time play caller, and my brother. I think they get things going early. I do. I think we're all of a sudden going, wait a minute. First-time play caller is dialing up some looks here. And once again, Georgia is going to have to make some adjustments. I think Florida goes into halftime with like a 13-10 lead. But as we'll get to with Doering, Georgia roars back. I think wins this one 31-27.
Yeah, and I think you just hit on like a really important part of this, which is actually that is a strength on a weakness for Florida. Georgia last in the SEC in sacks. Whereas Florida, I mean, the things that we've liked about them have been their trench play, specifically on offense. Now, what they've done with that, have they handed the ball off? No. And so, this isn't a typical Florida matchup where you go, well, they could just protect the quarterback and take the shots downfield. Because as we're saying here, that's not really Georgia's weakness. So if you can keep a clean pocket and you squander those chances trying to recreate the LSU or Ole Miss win with these like 50-50 balls, one of the freshmen down there somewhere, I think Georgia can capitalize on that. But if you can sit in the pocket, show some progress and not panic if you're DJ Lagway, which is not exactly the DJ Lagway MO, but I mean, it sounds as simple as if DJ Lagway could just kind of fundamentally change as a player, right? If he could become more of a game manager, if he could lock it down, if he can read the field and take the checkdowns, they do have a really good shot in this one. But I think that those just feels like Georgia always finds a way. Like we talk about, it feels like even in the shootout games, their offense finds a way. So, yeah, I think that this is, to your point, like going to feel close to a half, but I'd still say Georgia wins it by about 10.
Yeah, at some point in this game, it's going to be Josh McCray needs to pick up a big fourth down. Georgia's like on its own 45. Florida's leading. Georgia needs to be able to put together a scoring drive. Otherwise, Florida's going to be set up in prime position, maybe make it a 2-score game or something. And then they're just going to find a way. And it feels like Florida's the team that can't find a way. Georgia's the team that can. And maybe this ends up, it's possible too that this game ends up looking a little bit more lopsided than what the duration of the game actually feels like. But I trust Georgia, and I don't really trust Florida in those spots. By the way, Jaden Baugh is finally getting the rock. Say what you want about Billy Napier's usage of him before his last 3 games as Florida's coach, but in the last 3 games, dude's getting fed. I mean, I think he's averaging like 26 scrimmage touches or 25, something like that, and he's definitely become the focal point of the offense. But the problem is, what exactly does it look like outside of that? Are you able to get big time conversions late? Does your offense get stagnant? Florida has obviously done that a little bit too much. So I think Georgia is able to win a close one, just as they've been doing all year. All right, Mississippi State, Arkansas. 4.5-point favorites. That's what the Hogs are. The over-under I have, Will, is 0.5 references to toilets. Sorry, guys. This is the toilet bowl in every possible way. These two fan bases know it. Both winless in SEC play. Mississippi State shouldn't be winless in SEC play, but as it stands, the last SEC win that came 2 years ago at Arkansas, the 7-3 game that set offensive football back decades, the game that if you watched it, you regretted watching it, and you thought to yourself, why didn't I make more productive use of my time during this 3-hour window where I just basically watched two teams slam their heads into a wall? That was the day that Arkansas fans wanted Sam Pittman gone. They eventually got their wish. Yeah, they did end up being right. I will say that. Unfortunately for them, the interim guy ain't much better. He's not. Don't tell Robert Patrick I said that, but it's true. Arkansas still can't win a close game. They still can't. It turns out this might just be the MO. This might be who you are until you're not that, and they still are that. Mississippi State can't win a close game either. Something's got to give, but maybe not. Maybe these teams can just scrap the fourth quarter, play steal the bacon to decide it instead of football, because that's when they're at their worst, playing football in the fourth quarter of a game. Yes, pun very much intended with steal the bacon. Great childhood game, was very good at it. In the fourth quarter alone this year, Will, Taylor Green has 5 interceptions. That's bad. That's real bad. I believe that's the most in America. From everything that I looked at, that was the most in America.
It sure feels that way.
Yeah, it definitely feels that way. And I think there's some fumbles sprinkled in there as well that I was
going to say too, that's not just turnovers. That's like he's fumbled, the run game is fumbled. It has been not a fun time.
Yeah, also averaging just 3 yards per carry in the fourth quarter. And that's somebody that for most of the rest of the season has, at least in those non-fourth quarter spots, has been one of the more efficient runners in all of college football. Kind of fitting that at the end of the night, the 4 local quarterback is basically face down puking in the bathroom. That's what this is. I mean, against the Mississippi State team that has the most interceptions of anyone in the SEC, I think that's where the night ends. And I realize this isn't the night, but you get what I'm saying. I'm going to say don't watch all 4 quarters of this one unless you're a true sicko. And maybe even that, just if you got YouTube TV, put it on the multi-view, something like that, just have it on in the fourth quarter, something like that. Watch how stupid this gets. These teams both just cannot stop doing stupid things. Maybe that's a dumb way, a lazy way to describe 2 bad football teams, but that's what we have here. They can't stop doing stupid things. The winner of this game will embrace the wise words of one Dwight Schrute, who very famously said, quote, "Whenever I'm about to do something, I think, would an idiot do that? And if they would, I do not do that thing." Very true. Well, I'm once again picking Mississippi State to do less idiot things than Arkansas. Maybe that's dumb. 34-30 Bulldogs, unless they decide to play steal the bacon in the fourth quarter, in which case I am definitely taking the Hogs.
Yeah, and on the other side of the quote is Robert Patrick Petrino and Taylor Green, who instead say, "Bleep it, we ball," if an idiot would do that thing. That being said, I mean, this is like the most must-win game for Levy, right? Like, because you're not, respectfully, you're not beating Georgia.
You're not going to a bowl game without this win, and you're probably still not going to a bowl game even if you win this one.
Probably not still going to a bowl game because, yeah, you got Ole Miss. And again, that game could be weird. Like, I'm not saying that's out of the realm because we've seen, like, when you said toilets, I was like, oh, gosh, did I miss some more news? Because one of these teams has already been in a toilet scandal with the dog urination situation. So I was like,
do we consider that a toilet situation? Dogs don't.
Fire hydrant. Good point.
Okay. Yeah.
A simulation, a facsimile. But anyway, so yeah, Levy has to win this game. I mean, if he can't win this game, I hate to just say fire, but what are we doing here? I mean, right? Like, who are you? Like, I guess they don't play Kentucky this year, but that's really who you're measuring yourself against. Like, it's hard for me to have hope when you're looking at 4 straight SEC losses, and weirdly 4 games that felt winnable in the fourth quarter. And at some point, you have to win a game. Like, you just have to win a game. Like, I'm sorry, like close losses. I know Mississippi State like has been through some hard times and stuff, guys, but like I remember those Dan Mullen years. They were not that far away. And there's a standard here that I feel like we got to keep, right?
I agree with that. And I think you also need to go into the Egg Bowl, which is in your building, having bowl possibilities available and knowing that maybe you can play spoiler for Ole Miss or something like that. You need that on the table, because if it's not, then all of a sudden you're looking up going, wait a minute. All right, so we won those 4 games. But when did we win those 4 games? Did we really get better down the stretch? Do we have a quarterback of the future? Do we feel like our coach has figured things out with game management? Because that's been a big issue for Jeff Lebby. And there's a reason. Like, it's not just simply bad luck that his team has lost all of these very winnable games. Like, they have put themselves in dumb spots. Like the pass call late in that Florida game. You're just like, buddy, what are we doing here? Like, this is, you just can't have that in that moment. And so the problem is that if you don't win this game, if you're Mississippi State, while I will continue to say that he has more grace than what the casual fan would probably realize because of the Zach Selman element, both of them coming from Oklahoma, having that previous relationship, I do think that he all of a sudden, if you don't win this game, I'm just going to assume that without an Egg Bowl win, you're going to be on every hot seat list in America going into year 3. And you're not necessarily building in the way that it looked like you were going to when you won that Arizona State game. And we've said so many times, this is a better team than the record shows. At this point, you can't really justify it, though. You can't really sit here and spin that. And I do think that you're right. This is really significant. It's more significant for Mississippi State than it is for Arkansas. Arkansas just wants a vibe that doesn't suck, and they would like to see Bobby Petrino happy. What would Bobby Petrino happy even look like, though? I don't know.
What do you think Bobby Petrino's drink of choice is?
It ain't Sam Pittman.
Cold beer.
It ain't a cold beer. It's Coors Light guy. Miller Light guy. I would go. Oh, and by the way, this is, I don't know if Bobby Petrino did like something where he got like sober 5 years ago, 6 years ago. We're talking about like peak Bobby Petrino at some point in his life, if and when he'd have a post-victory cocktail or maybe a post-loss sadness cocktail. I would say he's a bourbon man. A bourbon on that. Straight. Not necessarily an old fashioned. That's a little bit too much work for him. Yep. But like just a straight bourbon man.
Yes, I'm right there with you. And I think we're, again, totally aligned on this game. Whereas, like, if you're Arkansas, I think we've kind of determined Bobby Petrino isn't the guy going forward. Because to your point, losing close isn't – this is like the battle of losing close, right? I'm so sad that Mississippi State doesn't play Auburn this year, you know, because that would be like someone has to win this game. And we just saw that with Auburn and Arkansas. But, yeah, this is, again, such a much bigger deal for State, where you go into a situation where you should win this game. I don't care that they're not favored. You have been a better team this year. I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter to me. Again, we can't have it both ways. We can say your record is this, so you're terrible, or we can say you've had all these close losses, so you have job security. If you've had all these close losses, so you have job security, you need to win this game, because then that puts you in a position at Mizzou, a team that's historically been a little bit scared, a team that's kind of reeling right now, where you could secure something resembling a winning season, bowl eligibility, because again, I do not see a Georgia win at home. I do not see an Ole Miss win. And to your point, you know, if you win this game, you lose to Mizzou. Well, the Egg Bowl could be for bowl eligibility. We don't know what Lane Kiffin's going to be doing at that point. We've already seen an Egg Bowl in 2022 kind of go that way, where it's like, Lane Kiffin, like, not too fired up to be here. So that being said, like, this is a super duper must win game for Lebby to me.
I would love to know the stats of a 2-win team that performs at an offensive rate better than Arkansas. Like, how many teams in the history of college football have had an offense that good while only winning 2 games, if they end up being a 2-10 team, which TBD on that. But it's you look at some of these numbers for Arkansas and their offense, and you just think to yourself, wait a minute, how are these bad? And then you look at some of the aforementioned fourth quarter numbers and the defensive issues, and the penalties and all that stuff. It just kind of adds up, and you're reminded, oh yeah, this is why you can't have nice things. Somebody is going to have a nice thing by day's end on Saturday, and that is an SEC win. And it will be celebrated like a Super Bowl. And I can't say I blame either team, but it is the toilet bowl. Make no mistake about it. South Carolina, number 7, Ole Miss. Ole Miss, 12.5-point favorites. The over-under I have is 0.5 Austin Simmons snaps. And I am not trying to do anything where I talk about the health or the QB1 status of one Trinidad Chambliss, who is 8th in the latest Heisman odds on FanDuel. Funny that we will still very likely get another Pete Nakos tweet announcing that Chambliss is the starter, and we'll all go, wait, what? Okay, all right, got it. It's got to be just a lane troll at this point. I would assume everything is pretty much a lane troll. But here's why I bring up Simmons. Ole Miss cannot play in blowouts. Doesn't know how to do it yet. 6 of 8 games this year have been 1-score games. They're 5-1 in those contests, which is the good news. But sooner or later, you need a laugher mixed in. You just do. You're playing with fire too much if you do that. And ideally, you would not like to have your team playing in these stressful situations late. We talk about, like in baseball, the high stress innings. If you're a starting pitcher and you're going 7 innings, yeah, it might be great that you're putting up zeros on the scoreboard, but if 5 of those 7 innings are high stress innings in which you've got guys, runners in scoring position, stuff like that, you've got like a walk or two in each of those innings, that's going to catch up to you. It just will. And this is an Ole Miss team that hasn't played in a blowout game since September 20th against Tulane. I said Tulane so well there. So well. Nailed it. Lane would ideally like to get some of those second teamers out there and perhaps not play with fire late, because the last thing he wants is for a situation like last year where all of a sudden a lesser team that just kind of hangs around finally gets to Ole Miss, and suddenly that playoff path is ruined and Ole Miss will have nobody to blame but itself. Shout out Chris Stapleton. Everything should line up for a blowout. Everything. You've got a South Carolina team that just suffered an emotional loss against Alabama. They're extremely vulnerable in a variety of areas in which you would think Ole Miss should be able to take advantage of. And they've suffered two-score losses in their lone true road games. And you whipped this team in their building last year. Different teams, but still counts for something, right?
South Carolina was better. Ole Miss was worse.
Wait, well, that's debatable.
Almost lost to Kentucky last year, man.
It was one of the 5 best rosters in college football.
Listen, me, an LSU fan, rosters don't win you games.
True. I fully understand that. I would still put that Ole Miss team and the vast majority of the football that they played as one of the 5 best teams who did not get it done. In these close games, and they lost 3 games by a combined 13 points. We don't need to relitigate that. But I still think that Ole Miss was very, very good last year. Was very, very good. And they were last in the SEC in percentage of returning production. That's why I argued this week, this is Lane Kiffin's best coaching job of his career. And to get this to this point, now you ruin that if all of a sudden you lose a game like this to South Carolina. I'm going to say that playing at night in their own building makes a difference. Lane has been advocating, students, we need you. We need this to be a hostile atmosphere. More motivation than ever for that Ole Miss fan base to come out and make it a hostile atmosphere, given the conversations surrounding Lane and potentially leaving for other jobs. In a building where Lane has just 1 loss since the start of 2023 to Kentucky, I'm going to say it's a rare multi-score win. Chambliss keeps rolling. A little bit of Austin Simmons late. Ole Miss wins 31-14.
It'd be so funny if Austin Simmons got put in. They're up like 24 points, and he just immediately throws a pick.
I feel bad for Austin Simmons. I still like Austin Simmons, and I'm not selling stock on him in the same way I never sold my Haynes King stock. I never sold my Connor Wigman stock. It's all there. Those are just former A&M quarterbacks, but I will probably talk up Austin Simmons wherever he transfers next year.
Yeah, and I think us even talking about that kind of foreshadows right what we're talking about with this game, which is that I agree with you. I think this is Lane's best coaching job, and again, we can compare it to this year and last year. Jackson Dart being a solid, good rookie NFL quarterback is actually pretty shocking to me. I think just at least as a rookie, I thought it would take him some time to acclimated, especially on a bad team.
I agree.
So to your point, it's almost like that roster is aging well, which would then make the coaching job age worse, because that certainly was a team that could have contended last year. But
agreed.
I say that to say, like, I'm saying this to be complimentary of Lane Kiffin, which is that if you take a worse roster to a better place, I think overall, like, I would rather see, I mean, again, like, hate to just make it about my team, but like that team, like LSU had a chance against that team last year. And when it came down the stretch this year, they shut the door on LSU. And I think that, again, looking at a South Carolina team that, was a couple of chances away last year, they've only been there once this year against Alabama. And so I think this game is going to be a laugher. I think, especially at home for Ole Miss, it's a chance where, quote unquote, the distractions like really shouldn't even factor in here. And specifically against South Carolina, who it feels like, yeah, they got a lot of players healthy for the last game, which was kind of an underrated reason why they were able to compete in that Bama game. But that game, again, empty the tank game, right? Like 4.5 quarter game in terms of the high stress factor that you just talked about, where you're coming back, you're clinching, then you're, maintaining a lead, you're defending a lead, you're giving the lead up, now you're losing. Oh my God. Like, so just an emotional roller coaster, having your fans, basically go through a college football game worth of sweat watching it, right? Now you got to go on the road to Ole Miss and a team that's riding super high. And it's hard after a loss like that to be Beamer and to say, like, hey guys, like, if you win that Bama game, you could say this is the real team. Now that we got our guys in, now that we're running our system, this is what we're really about. Now we have a chance. Now it's like, yeah, even playing what has been our best game of the year, we still played mistake-full football. We still had these weird chances go the other way, whereas Ole Miss has been so dynamic at capitalizing on that. So, yeah, I think Lane Kiffin might be on his cell phone by the fourth quarter.
I would think there's a good possibility of that. I would think so. And I think Kewan Lacey should have a big day against the South Carolina run defense that played better against Alabama, albeit an Alabama run defense that has struggled this year. And I think that Lacey being able to put games away has been helpful. Chambliss is making smart decisions, being able to put games away as well, and not necessarily being one of these guys that like kind of feels the pressure and tightens up in some of these moments. I understand 13 yards in the fourth quarter against Georgia, but still, I come back to the belief that this Ole Miss team is situationally better than last year's. And maybe that's the biggest difference. Doesn't mean that it necessarily results in, making a college football playoff semifinal or something like that. But you do trust them, at least at this point in the season, to finally show we're a good football team. And we've learned how to be able to kind of weather the storm and get to this place where the playoff path is wide open. Wide open. If Ole Miss misses the playoff this year, it will be so unbelievably bad for Lane Kiffin because of what it could take to get there. The conversations around him would drastically change over the course of the next month. I don't think that happens. I already said Ole Miss is going to the playoff. I think that continues with a win against South Carolina.
Ole Miss, real quick, remaining schedule: South Carolina, Citadel, Florida, at Mississippi State. No ranked teams in there. Certainly a couple of hard outs.
Florida no winning records left there.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, you're so right. I'm saying that as if it was like disagreeing. You're right. That's a good way to say it. But I do want to say, Florida interim coach, different team. Mississippi State, those close losses. Egg Bowl might be fighting for bowl eligibility. So like, it's not like basically South Carolina should be dead in the water. You shouldn't play with your food. Those two teams could kind of like, they have reasons to be a little bit more locked in. So you need to win this game, and you feel almost assured that you would have to lose both of those games to miss the college football playoff.
If you told any playoff hopeful team that's your remaining slate, and all you have to do, you even have a loss to give. I think at 10-2, Ole Miss would still be set up well. I think the win at Oklahoma is still going to matter a lot. I think people would look at the close loss at Georgia and say, like, that's not a bad blemish. It's not a guarantee necessarily, but still, any playoff hopeful team would take that slate in a heartbeat and say, sign me up. Let's start planning our home playoff game.
We've had a lot of very funny results this year. Florida, Texas being maybe chief among them, but maybe the funniest possible outcome would be Florida beating Ole Miss on the road, because it's like,
and
what
then
do
saying,
we do now?
We want you, Lane. We want you. See, this is why you need to come to Florida. Even when we got an interim coach, we can still win a game like this.
Billy could win on the road. It's like, he was holding this roster back. Even I can win on the road. I'm Georgia coaching staff. Come on, bud.
If Billy Gonzalez gives Florida its first true road win against an AP top 25 team since, what would that be? Since 2018? Because the first win away from home against a true road team since 2020 cocktail party. That's what Florida would be searching for in that spot against Ole Miss. I think it's been since 2018. I want to say it's been since 2018 since Florida has won a true road game against an AP top 25 team.
Yeah.
Wild. Anyway, number 18, Oklahoma. Number 14, Tennessee. Tennessee's a 3 points favorite. The over-under I have is 3 references to playoff elimination game. It just is. Just is. Maybe you could say that a 9-3 Oklahoma team who wins at Alabama would have a little bit of an argument if Michigan keeps on winning. But I would still need to see a 9-3 at-large team in the field, and one that probably has a better resume than what OU has going into November, in order for me to say that that's a realistic possibility. I just don't know that you can bank on that. Dare I say, Will, less drama, but higher stakes than last year's Heupel reunion game in Norman. Agree or disagree with that?
I mean, the thing is, that game, as far as a game, wasn't that dramatic. You know, like, I think as far as a game, this would be a way better game. I think it'll be a lot more back and forth. And so I think it's both. Like, I think it could be more dramatic. It could be more, certainly higher stakes. Because, like, remember, that was the game where it was did they take their foot off the gas out of respect? Hold on, guys. Tennessee actually could have scored 70 in this game, but Heupel was being respectful. And then it turned out they couldn't actually do that, and that was just who their offense was. And so, yeah, like, kind of the second half of the game was basically academic, right? There were some weird fumbles and stuff in that game, but it wasn't really a good game. Whereas this one almost has to be a good game.
I would think so too. I would tend to think so too. This is a really good strength on strength matchup, but also maybe a bad on bad matchup as well. Classic. The good on good is the Oklahoma defense against Tennessee offense. Sort of what you would expect. Brent Venables, Josh Heupel. Vols averaging 7 yards per play. OU is allowing half of that. Tennessee has the number 2 scoring offense. OU has the number 5 scoring defense. Tennessee 6th in 30-yard scrimmage plays. OU is 9th in 10-yard plays allowed. We watched Oklahoma's defense struggle against, I think, the first elite offense that it faced this year. I think that's fair. Like, I don't want to totally eliminate. I don't want to totally diminish what OU has seen so far, but you kind of look back at some of the offenses that they faced, and at this point, I don't think we can just say, well, they're bad because Oklahoma made them look bad. Nah, I think the Auburn offense with Jackson Arnold, pretty bad. I think the Michigan offense with Bryce Underwood in his first true road start, pretty bad. I think that the Texas offense, still pretty bad. Like, I just don't necessarily think that they have faced an elite offense until what they faced with Ole Miss when they came into Norman. And we also watched Tennessee's offense struggle against Bama and what was the only top 20 defense that it faced all year. So what does that mean? You know, what is the more inevitable force between that and the good on good matchup? I think it's the Tennessee offense. I think Aguilar looking healthy against Kentucky, kind of lost in the shuffle of all the things that happened in the SEC. That was big. After that was questioned coming off of that weird hit that he took where he knocked out the communication system on the Arkansas sideline. They have really, I think the Oklahoma offense not looking totally right with their quarterback coming off injury, I think has been obvious. And John Mateer, for all the great things we've said about him this year, they all happened before the thumb injury, you know? Like they all, well, I guess in the immediate wake of the thumb injury, he did complete 12 consecutive passes, and we were complimentary of that. But, you know, like since that game, he has not looked fully healthy. He hasn't looked fully right, at least. They've struggled to
salt John Mateer is undefeated. Just hit the sideline. I'm ready to go, coach. Let me get 12 straight completions. I can't feel my thumb.
Maybe he needs to break a thumb every game. I don't know how many thumbs he's got, but yeah, whatever you can do to get this offense going, because, you know, they still have guys that can hit the explosives like that. That's still there in ways that it wasn't last year. That's a positive for Oklahoma. And you do feel better with the ball in his hands as opposed to Jackson Arnold. So, like, I'm not saying that this is just 2024 all over again, but I do wonder if this matchup is kind of a reminder that he's been a different guy since returning against Texas. 10 touchdowns that he had in the 4 games pre-injury. Well, I guess including injury, we're including Auburn in that. And then 2 touchdowns in the 3 games post-surgery. Only 36 total rushing yards since then. The yards after contact are down, and it just hasn't necessarily been a reliable part of the offense. You can kind of argue, well, they're going away from that. They want to protect him. They want to keep him for the long haul. They've still been willing to have the design runs for him. They just haven't been quite as effective. I think you want him throwing the ball a lot in this one, especially after watching Cutter Boley just totally carve up that Tennessee defense with how banged up they are, especially still at corner. But I think John Mateer just makes a few too many mistakes in this one, Will. I think Josh Heupel, who doesn't lose to non-Georgia teams at Neyland, that continues. And he doesn't lose to his alma mater at Neyland. I'm going Vols to win this one, 34-28.
As I was kind of like looking at the comps here, is it weird that I guess I just mentally think that Tennessee is like more talented than Ole Miss? Kind of like what we just talked about. Is that how do you view those two teams' talent on offense?
It's so hard with the portal to what's considered talent. How much of this is scheme, because both obviously really advantageous schemes. You see big throwing windows. Would I want the Tennessee receiver room over the Ole Miss receiver room? Yeah, probably, but that's not like a slam dunk decision, even though Tennessee's receivers have been great. Do I feel better about the depth of Tennessee's backfield compared to the depth of Ole Miss's backfield? Yeah, I do. But would I still take Kejuan Lacey probably over the Tennessee backs? Yeah, I think I would over any individual one. If you look at like the missed tackles force, yards after contact, that stuff is more in Lacey's favor than the Tennessee backs. But it's I think you could split hairs with that. I don't know that you would look at either of those groups and say definitively, oh, they just have way more talent. They're going to be able to do X, Y, and Z in a way that team couldn't.
I'm getting around in this ninth conference game because I want to see more of these teams playing. Especially, I'm starting to get really sick of flipping the schedule because like that's a game. Ole Miss, Tennessee, that would be awesome. I think Ole Miss would actually kind of win handily just because their defense is kind of average. But yeah, that being said, I mean, if you look at Oklahoma and if you would say, okay, this is the only what we would describe as, I think both Ole Miss and Tennessee are elite offenses, right? Tennessee is obviously the number one offense in the SEC. Ole Miss is right behind them at third. So like in terms of yards, you can kind of split that a couple of different ways. But that being said, like I think that no way to kind of get around that. Offensively, yes, schematically, they're different teams, but in terms of personnel, in terms of their ability to run the football, their ability to be multidimensional, which is a weird thing to say about the Josh Heupel offense. Like we've talked about, Aguilar is, maybe it's the personality of Aguilar and the way that he kind of exists outside of the scheme a little bit more. But again, Chambliss can do that too. He can kind of scramble, move with his legs. So I say that to say Oklahoma at home struggled mightily against Ole Miss. And I think, and particularly on defense, like I said, that touchdown they gave up, the first touchdown of the game, I brought it up on the pod, was just such an eye-opener for me because it felt very uncharacteristic. And it feels like maybe Josh Heupel doesn't have the exact ability to create stuff like that in the way that Lane Kiffin does, but his quarterback does. And that's where it starts to get interesting. I don't anticipate there being a second 99-yard pick six here. I think that they've already gotten that out of their system. Maybe being a little bit more risk averse for them would be good. So, yeah, that being said, I think that if we're going strength on strength, I really do trust Tennessee's more, given that they have been able to, again, frustrate Georgia. They've been able to frustrate some of these other teams, maybe exactly not Alabama, but again, we can talk about the 14-point swing. Yeah, I do like Tennessee here, and it wouldn't shock me if they won big because of the element of being able to force John Mateer into these disadvantageous situations, even when healthy. Right. And I think that's like a really big deal as far as like, what are we good at? What can we hang our hats on? I think that Tennessee has always been able to like create a little bit of chaos in that way. And so for Mateer, it's just about keeping him on schedule. But again, like if you were to like the Tennessee defense, I'm not saying that we do, but you would like the middle of them, the kind of the front seven. The corners are a liability, but I don't think John Mateer is the type of guy that really can say, hey, I'm going to dictate this game and pick on these corners. I think he's being relied on in the run game a ton, like we've talked about. I think that the way he wants to play football is a little bit more of that, like on the fly, up the middle, read option style. And that's if Tennessee had something that they would feel a little bit better about, that would be it. So I'm going to go Tennessee by 10 here.
I could see a world in which John Mateer hits Isaiah Satania, who's just been a great addition to that receiver room. Kind of surprised. I'm surprised that he's kind of usurped Deion Burks from in that like go-to role. He's playing a lot more in the slot than Deion Burks was last year, at least what the expectation was. And they have Burks playing on the outside a lot more. And he's been a little bit more invisible than I thought he'd be sometimes in games. And Satania has been kind of the big play guy, which I guess was a little bit more expected. But there's definitely a world in which Satania gets a few of those huge chunk plays. And Tennessee is just all of a sudden turn around watching him run for a 75-yard touchdown. And Mateer can definitely, find the holes in a defense like this and make plays like that. But, I do think that for Brent Venables, this has been the type of win you have not been able to get. This has been the type of game that has eluded you. Hostile atmosphere, true road game. You know that it could get a little bit back and forth, shootout style, kind of away from the type of style that you would typically like to be coaching in. Brent Venables, I think, would like to win these games 21-17. I do. I think this is a huge, huge Toby Keith opportunity for him. Big time. We will be singing his praises and talking about how do you like me now if he's able to beat Josh Heupel, avenge last year's loss to keep his team's playoff hopes alive in what figures to be a really difficult atmosphere to play in, and especially defensively if his unit shuts down one of the most prolific offenses in college football, led by one Josh Heupel, obviously, then that's a huge statement that Brent Venables can put in his back pocket, maybe even more so than the Bama game last year. I really think that with the timing of his new boss potentially coming in here, this is the type of win that would say a lot. And you avoid that losing streak too, which that's a big part of this as well. You're trying to avoid losing multiple games in a row, having, boosters all of a sudden going, hey, we're out of the playoff conversation. Are we really in the direction that we want to be going as a program overall? We've seen things can change in a hurry for these head coaches, man. They really, really can. And especially once you suffer that third loss, context is going to be really important. But I just think the opportunity for Brent Venables is massive. And if he pulls out a big time victory, it will mean a ton for him long term.
I think the Bama win was kind of in a class by itself, especially kind of the situation that the team was in, with how do we fit in here. I don't want to kind of downplay that because that was one of the most shocking results. And I'll say this too, just a couple of stats that I looked up the sacks thing. A couple of things stood out to me because these two teams are top 4 in the SEC in sacks. Oklahoma second, Tennessee is fourth. But where it gets really interesting is passer rating allowed. Oklahoma is number 1 in the SEC. Tennessee is second to last. And then one final thing here. Neither of these teams have been able to really catch picks. They're both second, like bottom half of the SEC. Oklahoma is like laughably bad considering how good their defense is. Funny enough, A&M now last in the SEC in interceptions. But Oklahoma now second to last there. So you have two quarterbacks who aren't awesome. Like they're good under pressure. They could escape the pocket, but they've been known to throw some meatballs while being pressured. You have two defenses that are able to pressure, but you also have two defenses that have not been able to capitalize on that pressure and create picks. So this is going to be like a two sides war where it's like who can make the other quarterback melt down. And again, in that aspect, you like Oklahoma, but I just think their quarterback situation is not as desirable as Tennessee's. And Tennessee's issue is more of, I guess they both trust themselves too much from a quarterback standpoint, but it feels like Tennessee's offense, when they struggle, it is truly like, I can hit that guy. Whereas like John Mateer just feels like he's making bad reads when he throws picks. They're like some of the Texas one was like, I am God incarnate. Someone's gonna catch this. Like
these two quarterbacks can have some of those moments, like very much of, oh my God, why? What did you see there? What exactly was going through your mind when you made that decision? Like that could very much swing this game. I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Yeah. So it's going to be chaos. I'm actually like really getting hyped for this as I dig more and more into this game.
Yeah, my buddy Bronson, who goes to one Tennessee game per year, I was saying, I said the other day, like how he's going. I had initially thought about going to this game, and then I realized I was going to be it would mean missing Halloween, and I can't do that with Halloween on a Friday. I was like, I'm not at this point in Claire's life. Like, no, we're not. I'm not going to be sitting there in a hotel in Knoxville on Friday night while she's going out trick or treating. Can't do that. Can't do that. One thing that I've been a little bit timid to bring this up, but it needs to be brought up at this point. It's kind of an intrusive thought. I'm getting to the point where I'm worried we're not going to see Jermon McCoy play another college down. And I hope I'm cold taking myself. I really hope that by the time people are listening to this, maybe, and injury reports have come out and it's like, oh my God, Jermon McCoy, he's only questionable. He's they've been secretly getting him workouts or something behind the scenes. But I'm getting to that point, because you're still seeing that guy all over mock drafts and stuff. And I'm kind of wondering if maybe even this game will determine whether or not he comes back, because there's obviously a lot of risk there. But with the torn ACL that he suffered in January, I was really hoping that we'd see him at this point. And now I search every week for it and hope that we're going to get some good news. And even getting Ricky Gibson back, I think would be great for Tennessee. But at this point, I'm kind of just like, man, I just can't even expect it anymore. And I think Tennessee fans are starting to get to that place a little bit too, which is not ideal. Definitely not ideal.
I'll say it like this. There's actually at this point no logical reason for him to come back,
I
because
wouldn't say that. I would.
think about the tape he's going to put out on this defense with coming back from that injury and how crucial that movement is to being a corner. The odds of him showing up and looking like a day 1, day 2 draft pick when he plays. But I say that to say, if he does show up, Tennessee fans, you better be so appreciative and not be out there like, oh, this guy, he's a liability. Because how many times have we seen that? A guy like comes out, John Mateer's done this, comes in and tries to help his team and ends up either hurting them or not looking like himself. And suddenly that's held against him. So all I'm saying there is, like, if we see him again, please don't roast him for whatever he does, because truly in the modern age of college football, it would make all the sense in the world for him to just sit back and say, I'm good. I put all the good tape out there. All I'm going to do from here is bad tape. And so it is a testament to, honestly, Tennessee and the program that they're keeping him locked in amid a season that may not be a playoff season based on what we've seen. A lot of that's because of the defense. So again, if he was rejoining a great defense and you could kind of work him in as the third corner and kind of give him like that little slot role, whatever. But it's like, no, we're going to need to lean on you immediately to come back.
You're right. Like they desperately need him. They really, really need him with the things that they've struggled with defensively this year. Like they are, if they could have Jermon McCoy play the final 4 regular season games and pay him $1 million to do so just for those 4 games, it'd be worth it. It'd probably be worth it given what's at stake and given what Tennessee is desperate to avoid, which is being on the outside looking in of the playoff picture in this home stretch.
Absolutely.
All right. Kentucky, Auburn. Auburn's 10.5 point favorite. The over-under I have is 8 sideline shots of an idle Jackson Arnold. Hugh Freeze won't name a starter, but I will. Ashton Daniels is QB1 for Auburn. Heard it here first. He's starting this game. And if he's not, Hugh Freeze can just walk over there to the athletic office and turn in his resignation papers and say, I have given up. I have no idea how to manage this team anymore. I don't really get why Auburn is trying to play this coy. I kind of get that you don't want Jackson Arnold to be disengaged and all of a sudden he's checked out. And maybe there's some of that, but all you have to do is say, look, the one guy, he got us our first SEC win of the year. The other guy, he didn't. We play the guys who are best on this football team. I don't care that Ashton Daniels technically didn't lead an offensive touchdown drive in this one. And Arnold did. He also led a defensive touchdown drive with the pick 6 that he threw. And Auburn is going into November without a single SEC game with 3 offensive touchdowns. It's a problem. I think that changes. I think that changes on Saturday. I think it changes by the end of the first quarter, Will. Big start to the night for Auburn's offense with Ashton Daniels. 21-0 before Auburn can even get mad at the refs. How about that? I think Auburn fans are like, oh, finally, thank you, God, Kentucky. We needed to see you so badly. We needed to see Cam Coleman get more than 2 catches in a football game. We needed to see that Eric Singleton, that guy that we paid all that money for, he actually exists. We need to see a quarterback that's willing to actually uncork deep balls and be willing to target these guys in this offense. We're seeing it. Oh, goodness gracious. Isn't football fun again? By the way, Pete Nikos is doing a story this week on the worst officiating calls of the year. Can we just have anonymous coaches weigh in as the entire story, but only have it be Hugh Freeze? I would read that.
It's Hugh Freeze in several disguises.
Well, the one that happened in the place in Norman was just so egregious. Yeah, no, that'd be incredible. Anyway, this one won't come down to officiating, I don't think. What does matter is that Auburn's defense is darn good. It'll be a really tall task for Cutter Boley, who's making strides, doing a lot of great things off script. Kentucky fans happy in that way, unhappy in every other way. I don't think he'll be able to do anything in this one until it's too late. I think Auburn wins 35-14, and we're all left wondering why Ashton Daniels didn't get an opportunity sooner. Hugh Freeze will tell us that Auburn is turning the corner, and we'll all tell him that he played against a pair of SEC teams who haven't won a single game against power conference competition this year.
This is an SEC night game, huh?
Yep. Why does Jordan Hare get all the night games, Will? I'm just saying.
Wow. Man, outside of that, to be honest with you, it really wouldn't shock me if Kentucky won this game, just to be honest with you.
Mm.
And because, again, the funniest outcome is always the reality, which is that despite the horrors at Kentucky, they have found a way to get some semblance of a dink and dunk passing game going. And that's something that Auburn is still kind of being alluded to, even after a quarterback change. To your point, like, hey, yeah, a scoring opportunity for Auburn is 5 field goals, right? But Kentucky last week was able to convert those into touchdowns. 9 times they mattered. I understand that, but I don't know if Auburn could do that if it didn't matter. That's kind of my point. Is that like, hey, we're really the bottom of the barrel here is what we're comparing. It's not like one of these offenses is Tennessee, right? And so that being said, it wouldn't surprise me if we get a little bit of a too little, too late. How do you like me now game from Stoops? The only thing that does give me pause is I think even the kind of house cat version of Jordan Hare is enough to confuse a freshman on the other side. I think it's still an SEC stadium at night. I think that, we've talked about the spooky things that happened, but you really don't even need that against Kentucky. So if this game was in Kentucky, I would certainly pick an upset. I'll say that because, again, we're not really sure what Auburn has. We know what Jackson Arnold was, right? We know that. And it's kind of funny talking about him idle. It's like Jackson Arnold has 2 speeds, completely out of control and sitting on the bench. He's never just going half speed, right? This is the 2 times we've seen him. That being said, I mean, I think feeding Cam Coleman, exactly to your point, it sounds obvious, guys, but they don't do it. So until they do, we're going to keep talking about it because it's something they need to do. This is a perfect opportunity against this Kentucky defense that has kind of usually been their kind of steadying buoy. It seems they've kind of lost that in recent weeks as well. So with a backup, albeit veteran quarterback, you're going to want to lean on your weapons, the guys that you hit on that you kind of like paid for, like you want to see that kind of appear itself here. So yeah, I'm going to take Auburn to win, kind of a closer one. Let's call it a score. And I think this is going to be a very, like we thought Arkansas was ugly. I think this is going to be even uglier.
I think it could be the biggest game of Cam Coleman's career. Kentucky just allowed 300-yard receivers in a game in its own building at night. You know how hard it is to do that? You know how actively bad you have to be in the secondary to allow such a thing to occur? And meanwhile, Auburn is sitting here just like, what would a 100-yard game for a receiver even look like? That'd be, oh my God, that'd be amazing. Cam Coleman is still that dude. I'm not going to put any of this on him. I mean, I guess he could be getting a little bit more separation at times. I still think that the ability to make spectacular plays is very much in him, which we saw last week. And I still think the ability to take over a game is very much in him. I would argue he kind of took over the Oklahoma game, albeit in a losing effort. Auburn in a close game is always a losing effort. But in a game in which I think like kind of similar to last year, this is when he got going last year. And he went off. And all of a sudden it was a guy that, man, he was so special. He was must-see TV. I think we get reminders of that. I'm hopeful, very hopeful that the version of Cam Coleman that I thought we would see throughout this season is on display, and this is a SEC Offensive Player of the Week type performance for him.
Yeah, and again, like I know I talked about this in the previous pod, but it's just so funny. I'm sorry, where it goes, I post the thing after the touchdown on the SEC Instagram that just says "still him." I'm looking at my television, going, where is Cam Coleman in the SEC receivers ranking? Like, he's one of the most talented receivers in the SEC. You look at the box score; it's 2 catches, 27 yards, and you go, well, that's why. It's like Tennessee, to your point, had 3 guys over 100 yards. It's just impossible to call a guy all SEC anything when like his marquee kind of performance, marquee catch comes in this weird game against Arkansas that at the end it's like he had like kind of a backup running back stat line.
It's going to be some very interesting potential receivers in the portal. Maybe Cam Coleman's going to stay at Auburn. Maybe he will. But between Florida, between LSU, some of these big-time programs, man, have some very talented receivers that are likely already being recruited by plenty of teams in college football. All right, lock of the week. The most casual nailed lock of the week happened last week with Michigan State covering a 2-touchdown spread as an underdog. So that brings us to a resounding 3-6 in this segment. Still got a chance for a winning record, I believe. We get there.
You and Levy, bro.
Yeah, of course. We get on a winning streak this week. That happens. Stanford, 14.5-point home underdog against Pitt. We are Pat Narduzzi respecters, but this is not a Pat Narduzzi special, like what we would talk about going into Miami and pulling off an upset or something like that, or ruining someone's playoff chances. This is Pitt flying all the way across the country and playing a 3-5 Stanford team at 12:30 Pacific time. Stanford might be the 2025 version of Washington, of what Washington was last year. Remember how we would always bring up with Washington how they were winless on the road or winless away from home, but perfect at home? Just the perfect split. That has played out so far for Stanford this year. Maybe flying away all the way across the country for ACC teams isn't particularly fun. They are 3-0 at home. They are 0-5 on the road.
Dude, that Florida State game was like some of the most voodoo I've ever seen in my life. I watched the end of that one, and it was speechless that FSU didn't win that game.
So maybe there's something to be said for that, you know? Maybe they just have a way of sending visiting teams on a long plane ride home. That could happen again. Pitt's also been kind of like a weird 6-2 team. They lost earlier in the year in the backyard brawl. Herky-jerky season for their best player, Desmond Reed. They made a quarterback change. They've kind of taken off since then. Maybe that continues in a game like this, but I think Stanford does enough to make it at least a close down to the wire game, and maybe some of that Stanford magic kind of kicks in. The fighting Frank Reichs, the fighting Andrew Lucks. We get to 4-6 this week. Lock of the week is starting to take shape.
Yeah, the Frank Reich situation is interesting. I don't really want to spend too much time on it because he's hired as an interim head coach. I don't get how Frank Reich ended up in this situation.
It made sense. There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that was just not working with what Stanford was trying to do with its previous coaching staff. And I always omit Stanford when I talk about filling head coaching vacancies. And when we had Hayes on, I forgot to fill the Stanford vacancy. We could have brought this up the other day, Will. Brian Kelly at Stanford makes sense. Doesn't it?
What's the Stanford accent?
I'm not going there. I would hope he wouldn't either. But built-in excuse, just like he had at Notre Dame all those years. It's all about academics. Place that's just desperate for any sort of life. Get them to actually want to go to some of these games. A Notre Dame team that spent plenty of time out on the West Coast during Brian Kelly's time in South Bend. I'm just saying, Stanford. If we're going Stanford, Northwestern, Syracuse, high institution schools, call Brian Kelly.
Again, we know he cares about academics. He cares about running the football. He cares about physicality. Those are the places for him. Depending on how he feels that day, it could be Cali bro, a little John Elway, maybe a little like Elon vibe, try to pull off the South African. Can't wait. Cares
about his image. That's why you hire an image consultant. By the way, that surfaced in an ESPN story. I can't remember who wrote the ESPN.com story. Basically just kind of the Brian Kelly obituary. So apologies for forgetting who wrote that. But I had someone tell me that a few months ago that Brian Kelly had hired an image consultant. And I was like, oh, that's bad. That's bad. I should have known right then and there that LSU wasn't winning a national championship when I found that information out. And I was kind of skeptical to talk about something like that with you because I didn't want it to just be this thing that we keep coming back to on the show of that's a guy that seems way more invested in all the wrong things, and it shows. But now looking back, I feel like we can bring that up and say, I think I should have brought that up when we were talking about the firing on the emergency pod the other day.
And hey, let the record show I didn't bring up Brian Kelly here, folks, but I will say hiring an image coach for Brian Kelly, I mean, you got to get a refund, right? I mean, whatever he was trying to do didn't work because this is an all-time low for his image. So, yeah, I mean, maybe he just should have hired more recruiting staff or gotten some AI going to where it looked like he was sitting in living rooms. I don't know.
Even the Netflix show, you can look back on now and go, he was really trying to clean that image up, wasn't he? Letting the cameras roll when he's in the car talking to his agent, too. That's a choice.
Dude, that's where the image consultant came in, was that show. That's a really good point because I remember being like, hey, he kind of looks weirdly likable here. And the way that they painted him, which we've talked about, like with documentaries often tell the story, which, hey, if you do with Brian Kelly, did no, they don't. But that's going to be really funny to rewatch now. But anyway, so yeah, I think that's what it was for, was like looking likable in those kind of off-season moments. Because in game, you can't you're not getting the call from the image consultant.
This is true. And if you are, we've got bigger issues on our hands, don't we?
Bobby, anyway. Take the sunglasses off.
Yeah, seriously. No, Bobby, keep them on. Always wear sunglasses, Bobby Petrino. Never, ever take them off. Be you. All right, let's kick it to Chris Doering. Great discussion with CD about a lot of Florida stuff, SEC receiver things as well. So here is CD. For those of you who are not watching Saturday Down South podcast on YouTube and just are audio only, now would be a good time to go on YouTube and subscribe to Saturday Down South, because we have all of our episodes are uploaded in full. If you like watching our individual game breakdowns, you're like, hey, you know what? 2-hour pod, that's really not for me. I really just kind of want to hear about my own team. That's fine. Saturday Down South on YouTube. We're going to have all of those matchup breakdowns. We do every single power conference game. We preview, we recap. That involve the SEC. So we have so much content right now on Saturday Down South on YouTube. We have YouTube exclusive videos, and sometimes we'll do interviews that are just on Saturday Down South on YouTube. So definitely go subscribe. Please do that right now. I'm now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is Chris Doering. CD, I had originally tried to get full cocktail party representation with Aaron Murray again, like we did last year, but he was slammed with, quote, speaking engagements. I don't know if you agree with this, but personally, I think that's a bad sign for Georgia if speaking engagements are more important than unpaid ball talk with the boys on a podcast.
Yeah, I'll take that. I mean, we haven't had a whole lot of good luck here in this series over the last 4 or 5 years. So anything that can kind of give us a mental edge, I'll take, man.
Let's get a vibe check from you, because I texted you after I saw your reaction post USF loss, and I could see it all over your face, like just how devastating it was to understand in that moment. Like, as frustrating as that loss was, the bigger picture thing was, okay, you're going to have to start over with another coach. This was going to not work out for Billy Napier, and you kept your composure extremely well, even though you had a ton of emotion going on. And I always tell people that you flipped the cursing switch better than anybody I've ever seen, like in media. And I do wonder, though, how close did you get in that moment to dropping an F-bomb on live television talking about Florida?
You know who brings out the urge to drop F-bombs is Peter Burns. So as long as I'm not on with him, I don't have that inclination quite as much. But you're right. I mean, I have a terrible mouth from being in the locker room over the years, and I never cuss around my parents. So I've been able to I've worked on this over the years to be able to have that kind of self-control. But actually, I blame it on my dad, because he introduced me to Eddie Murphy. I had Eddie Murphy delirious when I was probably like 12 years old. We went to the Raw concert, me and my dad and one of my friends. So the cursing, it comes by it naturally. And but the fact that I can, in those moments, particularly when the emotions kind of take over, that I can restrict the cursing is pretty crazy.
You were close. You were really close.
It was frustrating, though, Connor. I mean, I think early in the season, there was a lot of hope for this Florida season coming up, because, you know, finishing with 5 wins at the end of the year, having a quarterback, feeling like you've added the right people around the quarterback, it just all felt like it was going to be a season where there was a lot more that was achievable. And then to lose at home against USF, knowing that you had that brutal 4-game stretch coming up against LSU and Miami and Texas A&M, it just didn't really bode well. So I think what you saw from me, and probably a lot of other Florida fans over the following weeks, was, you know, it went from anger to apathy. And I think ultimately that's why Scott Strickland had to move on, because there was a feeling of apathy that kind of crept in. Like, it was inevitable that Florida was going to lose. It was inevitable that Billy Napier was going to be let go. And you know, now we sit here in purgatory trying to figure out who it's going to be. But I think it was the next logical step, given the apathy that it kind of creeped in.
Who do you want it to be to replace Billy Napier at Florida?
Yeah, I don't know exactly. I think there's a style. I think every team has a style of coach that you need to have, and I think a lot of people at Florida, he's the next Lane Kiffin, or excuse me, he's the next Steve Spurrier. I think everybody kind of talks about, but you know, it has to be an offensive-minded coach. I think it has to be a guy that's had success in the SEC, somebody that comes in with a fun, entertaining style of offense that's going to put points up, and really more than anything has the propensity to put the pedal down and win, because not good enough to win close games, as Will Muschamp found out. That 10-2 season wasn't aesthetically pleasing enough to Florida fans. It has to be done with offense, and it has to be done with beating teams by a bunch of points.
What about Eli Drinkowitz? Are you going to be the only person that I've met so far that has Florida affiliation that would be willing to accept him as a
Oh,
fit in Gainesville?
I love Drink, and again, I'm not advocating for any SEC coach to leave to go to any other SEC school, but I do think that that's what I worry about. So many people have put in this idea that it has to be Lane Kiffin, and if it's not Lane Kiffin, then it's going to be a disappointment. And so I wonder, how it's all going to shake out, and if people are going to get behind whoever it ends up being, or if it's going to be one of those deals like Ron Zook where you had to fire ronzook.com before you even coached a single game at Florida.
I do fear that there could be a lot of people that would definitely satisfy that. And look, I don't think I would really push back unless it was James Franklin. That's the only guy that I think I would say, "What did you just do?" And
Yeah.
that's my long history of being anti-Franklin is well documented. I don't need to go into it, but is there anybody else that you kind of think of in your head, like you kind of describe the ideal candidate of like offensive minded, blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying you have to throw this type of person under the bus, but would you say, all right, let's not go for a group of 5 coach. Let's only it has to be a power conference head coach that we're hiring for this vacancy.
I think only because Florida has gone that route of the next young up-and-coming coach, whether we're talking about an assistant that gets a first-time opportunity like Will Muschamp got, or whether you're talking about a guy that is coming up through the ranks of the mid-major type programs. Florida doesn't have the ability to miss on this hire. It's been, as you kind of alluded to earlier, constant turnover every 3 or 4 years. We're talking about another coach. There's not a single coach since Urban Meyer that's made it to year 5, and we're talking about 4 different coaches there. So it's got to be somebody that checks all the boxes, and if you do miss, you can point back and say, there was nothing more than we could do. It fit everything that we needed, and it just didn't work out.
CD, Saturday feels like Vegas has already accounted for interim energy in Jacksonville by making Georgia just a touchdown favorite. 7.5 was the latest that I saw as of this recording on Tuesday late morning. But maybe that's more of an indictment of Napier than anything else. If by the time I am watching SEC football final on Saturday night, which I do every Saturday night, if I see you with your you-know-what eating grin looking over at your boy Ben Watson – what was it that fueled that Florida upset?
I think 2 things. I think it's the unpredictability of what the offense may look like, with a different play caller, with somebody that maybe is not, feeling like they have to be as conservative, can just let it all hang out. I think if you're Georgia, you don't necessarily know what to expect. I mean, we saw this with Bobby Petrino's Arkansas re-debut against Tennessee. They started running the football heavily and really gave Tennessee's defense all they could handle. So I do think there's that unpredictability that could be in the favor of Florida. But I also think it's something about Billy Gonzalez. This is a guy that's been multiple stints at Florida as the receiver coach, understands, when the rivalry was in Florida's favor. And Urban Meyer, he always emphasized the rivalry games. Urban was tremendous against Georgia. So you get a guy that gets his first opportunity, that speaks to what it's been like to be a part of the rivalry when we've been dominating it. And I think there's something to be said for what you said, interim coach energy, particularly when it's a guy like Billy Gonzalez.
Interim coach energy. We'll get that trademarked. We'll get that figured out.
It sounds good. It rolls off the tongue, doesn't it?
It does. It does. How bummed are you that this game is, it's being played in Jacksonville this year, but the 2 years after that in 26 and 27, that it's going to neutral sites and that it's not going to these campuses? Because I know you are a huge advocate of Jacksonville. I have since come around on that stance as well, but I get why, just the paycheck and what it costs to be able to bring home that type of payday. But doesn't it feel like it would have been just such a great opportunity to have these 2 games, in Gainesville and in Athens for this very rare stretch, much like you got to experience?
Yeah, you mentioned it. I got to experience it. I'm one of the few Florida players that ever got a chance to play them in Jacksonville, in Gainesville, and in Athens. And it was a bit of a novelty. I've argued, as you said, against making it a home-and-home game. I think then it starts to feel like every other SEC rivalry. And so having it on the neutral site in Jacksonville gives it a different feel. I don't think it's because they wanted to replicate that feel in Atlanta and in Tampa. I think it's more about the money grab. So, it makes me a little disappointed, particularly as how hard Kirby had been pushing to have it on campus. You finally get an opportunity to do that, and you elect not to take advantage of it. So, yeah, I don't know that it's going to feel quite as cool being in Mercedes-Benz or down in Raymond James, but I understand that they had to make some calls, and at the end of the day, money rules everything.
Let's get to some receiver talk with you. I don't think a casual college football fan could correctly identify any of the top 10 SEC leaders in receiving right now if they were just walking on campus. Like maybe they'd see like in the team gear and stuff like that, or they'd assume that it has to be someone, but would they be able to say, oh, that's that guy? I don't think so. And just a reminder for those who don't know what this list currently looks like going into week 10. It is Chris Brazzell, Mario Craver, Omega Blake, Braylon Staley, Isaiah Satania, Brennan Thompson, Mike Matthews, Kevin Coleman Jr., Casey Concepcion, Anthony Evans III.
Yeah.
How wild is that that's the top 10 in the SEC receiving? No Ryan Williams, no Cam Coleman, no Aaron Anderson. Like, this feels just like a very strange year with the way that it's played out so far.
Well, one, I don't think anybody would be able to recognize them on campus because these kids don't go on campus anymore. I mean, there was nothing better kind of than having a great game on Saturday and then walking through the set in Gainesville on Monday, getting, not only everybody recognizing you, but holding up the Florida alligator with your picture on it. I mean, setting that out on a desk with the co-eds walking by, that was a flex back in the day. But I would say, it's kind of like the quarterback situation, honestly. I mean, think about all the quarterbacks that we thought were going to be the dominant performers in the league heading into the season, and those guys are down around the bottom. And there's, nobody even knew who Trinidad Chambliss was prior to the season starting. And I feel like the receiver situation is much the same. Now, you mentioned by name Ryan Williams. I think a lot of it has to do with the distribution of the football to Jeremy Bernard and the rest of the receivers that they have on that roster. So, I don't necessarily think that's an indictment, but I do think it's pretty crazy. That list is at least 50% newcomers to the league too in terms of transfer portal, right?
8 of those 10 guys are former transfers. Go figure that the two guys that aren't, Staley and Matthews, are Tennessee guys, and Brazzell is leading the SEC in receiving, and he is a transfer guy now. He transferred the year before from Tulane, but still, like, can you even picture that? Is someone who in Florida, you are just the most Florida man of anybody that I know, and you played your whole career like mostly with one quarterback too, and like kind of understood that dynamic. It doesn't that feel so foreign though to come in and new surroundings and the quarterback runs in and out? Like, none of that matters with how this is played out with these receivers.
Yeah, I think of it for a couple of reasons, Connor. One, you know how much it meant to me to wear that orange and blue uniform and run out there in the swamp, and so that was a big deal. But I also think there's something to be said for being in an offense that you're comfortable with, that like the back of your hand, and don't have to think. You can just react and play fast. And with all these guys moving around, not only do you get paired with a new quarterback and have to figure out, how to develop that rapport with that particular quarterback, but, how do I read the coverages, and what are my adjustments, and what's the verbiage that's being used, and how quickly can I convert that to my base language that I understand a little bit better. So I couldn't even imagine. I guess I did it in the NFL because I jumped around a lot over my 10 years in the league. But, doing it in college just feels like it'd be a much harder kind of transition.
That's maybe why it maybe speaks more to why the SEC is starting to feel like the NFL too, with how interchangeable that's become. I have a take, and you're welcome to steal this and share it on SEC Final. Like, that's perfectly fine. Maybe you've already said this actually. The most valuable receiver in the SEC isn't in the top 10 in the SEC receiving. It's a guy you already mentioned. It's Jeremy Bernard, and he is the guy where if he went down, I think it would potentially swing multiple games, maybe even including the game on Saturday that Alabama played against South Carolina. It would swing multiple games for that team. And the reason that he's not in the top 10 in receiving is because Ty Simpson distributes the ball better than anybody in college football right now. And just the way that he has been able to impact the game, I would take him, I think, over those previous 10 guys. Maybe he doesn't have the highest upside and he's not going to have the best season, but I don't know. I'm becoming more and more a believer of that take.
About a month ago, I got into an argument in studio on a Friday night with Dari and Benjamin because they were promoted. Dari promoted. Everybody was talking Ryan Williams. I'm like, Ryan Williams is Robin. Jeremy Bernard is Batman, and I think you continue to see that with the utilization of how they use him in the out of the backfield, the motion him all over. He can do more now. Ryan Williams is tremendous, and I've softened on that stance a little bit because I've seen Ryan Williams do a little bit more, understand how to sit in zone coverages. But for a while, it was like, hey, Ryan Williams is the guy that's going to take the top off the defense, but when we need the gritty, gutsy catches over the middle, it's Jeremy Bernard. But I do think this group as a whole has certainly rounded out into form, and Ryan Grubb is using them beautifully right now.
Yeah, it's very, very evident to me. Is there one guy that stands out that you just like watching in a given week? And you can't say Dallas Wilson, that's a little bit too easy for you. But like, is there one of these guys you're like, man, I think he's doing such special things. Maybe we should be talking about him more. Maybe we're already talking about this guy.
Yeah, I hate to mention this name with Georgia on the horizon for my Gators, but Zachariah Branch is one that I love watching just because he reminds me of the human joystick back at Georgia a few years ago. I'm going blank. Isaiah, golly, you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, he's fun because they can use him in so many different ways. They can, throw the ball down the field to him. They can get more often used around the line of scrimmage to let them make guys miss. I think he's a bit of an X factor type player in this offense for Georgia this year.
How back in the day are we going? Because my mind went blank when you said Isaiah. I'm like, wait a minute. I thought I was about to go like we're about to go like late 2010.
Played for the Chiefs as well. I cannot believe that.
Dante Hall is the one that I was originally thinking of when you said human joystick, and he played for the Chiefs. Of course, that's not a Georgia guy.
Dante Hall won too, but yeah, definitely. I like. It's so different than my style of play, so you think that I would kind of be drawn to what I was able to do a little bit more. But I think maybe I'm fascinated by a guy that's that fast, but also that quick and can catch the ball down the field and runs good routes as well.
Why is that? It feels like Bobo is scheming better for him than Lincoln Riley could. Like, have you had time to like look into that yet? Of like, why was it not working for Zachariah Branch with USC last year? Now it worked out for him freshman year, so we at least have some proof of concept.
Yeah.
But it seems like Bobo's kind of putting him in better spots, and he fits that offense more.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I agree with you, but I also think that Mike Bobo gets such a bad rap, and that the rap primarily comes from Georgia fans themselves. I mean, this is a guy that played quarterback at that school, has been in multiple stints there. I think, to start the season, he doesn't want to show his hand too much, so they're a little more conservative. But by the time it's all said and done, they're doing some of the most creative things out there and really doing a good job of utilizing the different personnel members on that roster.
CD, I know you got to run here. I'll get you out of here with a prediction for Saturday. Cocktail party. You don't have to give. You know what? Let's go final score. It's late enough in the week. Tuesday. You've had a bye week to think about this. Do you have a final score prediction for Saturday in Jacksonville?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a close ball game. I mean, let's not forget last year DJ Lagway goes down. Florida has the lead at that point. I mean, even without Lagway, Florida has it's tied up heading into the fourth quarter. Game got away from them a little bit. I think this Florida roster is better than last year, and I think Georgia's not as good as what they were last season, particularly up front on the defense. So I think this is a 4-quarter game. At the end of it, Georgia finds ways to win. I like what you've seen from Alabama and Georgia this year in terms of making the plays when you got to have them. So I think Georgia ends up pulling off the win, staying with that one loss right now. I think they probably win 31-27 probably.
I like that a lot. I might just steal that. Yeah, I might have. Yeah. All right. We'll just take that.
Are you on the same mindset that Georgia ends up leaving with the victory?
Yeah, I was hoping that the spread was going to be a little bit bigger because I was kind of going to be the person to say I think this could be a field goal game. I really do. Like interim energy is real in 2024 or in 2025 rather. That's the year this is, and I'm just kind of the belief of like Florida all of a sudden like having this pressure off of it of not having to worry about this. They could play a style that actually frustrates Georgia, and Gunnar Stockton just continues to make plays though, and you just kind of can't bet against that guy late in a game when he needs to be able to come up. Even if they're trailing at that point. So I like that a lot. Do you have a bet with Ben Watson for this one?
We have not come up with a bet yet, but I take all bets. I mean, I'm not afraid. And that's the great part about we all agree on this in the locker room. You don't take points. PB is the guy that asks for points or, like guys that played at the actual schools don't take points. It's a pride thing. I'll take one. I used to respect the hell out of Hines Ward because when we played at Pittsburgh together, we were much better than Georgia was then. We had a standing $100 bet, but he'd take it. Wasn't afraid of the fact that Florida was a heavy favorite, double-digit favorites in those years, and paid up like a man. So I respect Hines for that.
Hines also was on a contract that could allow such a thing.
Very different contract than I was on. Minimum salary, no incentives. Hines much different there.
Yeah, you've done all right for yourself since then. Yeah, life is good.
Appreciate it, man.
CD, really appreciated the time, man. Best of luck. And again, I'll just steal all your takes. The score take that's stolen. That's mine. People have already heard me say 31-27. So
Hey,
thank you for that.
I'm glad. Hey, that's fine. And you and I are on the same page with Jeremy Bernard. So I think we're thinking with the same mind here on a lot of things.
Love it. Appreciate it, man. We'll talk soon.
Appreciate you, man.
Before we get to the rest of the podcast, I want to talk to you guys about Kalshi. This is something that is blowing up right now. Maybe you've seen people reference Kalshi in relation to a lot of different things that are going on in the world. And basically, this is a place where you can make money off of predictions. What do we do on these preview pods? We predict things. We tell you, hey, this is how you would bet here. This is how you would bet there. This isn't betting. This is sports trading. This is the ability to make predictions and say, hey, I can make money off of that. If you go to Kalshi right now, you can see that they have markets for a variety of different things. You can predict who's going to be the next head coach at UNC or Penn State or these different things that there are markets for. And the cool thing about this, all 50 states you can do this in. They are legal at the federal level. It's not a state-by-state deal. And so Kalshi has just a wide variety of things that you can make picks on, make predictions on, and win money. It's a really, really cool source to be able to kind of flex some of those prediction muscles. I know all of you listening to this, you guys can see into the crystal ball. So use the promo code SDS, get signed up today, and make yourself some money on Kalshi. Lad of the week, by the way, Isaiah McKenzie was the guy that Doering and I could not remember. He texted me immediately after we signed off. If you listened to the interview and didn't skip through it, you know what I'm talking about. We were stuck on an Isaiah, and I'll be honest, wasn't coming to my mind either at that moment. But Isaiah McKenzie was the guy. Georgia fans, you can stop yelling at your phones or cars or wherever you're listening to this. Anyways, lad of the week. Will, would you like to start us off?
I will. So this one to me was just like so automatic, right? Which is an unintended pun because it's Alex McPherson. I think that this dude, let's just talk about faith for a second. Something that can be a little bit different for a little bit, that can be a little bit different for different people. Not a super big thing to me, but I can really respect it when people have it. I've had some great conversations with our guy Brad Crawford about that too, and it's really inspiring to me when people can be grounded in that. And this guy is like Job, man, from the Bible. Like when you think about the way that he's had to go through all these trials and tribulations, he's had to go through, this illness. He's had to miss, full season for Auburn, basically. He's, will I ever not just play SEC football again, but will I be able to basically, perform just standard human tasks and stuff? And there are so many pictures of him floating around. This is a smaller guy overall, but just the way that
Understatement, Will. Understatement.
Yeah, but the way in the hospital, he just looked gone, man. Like he was all skin and bones, and it's so sad to look at and see, how it can kind of like affect people and how these people are more than athletes. And then in the middle of all this, we have the classic, journalistic professional Dave Portnoy firing off his non-biased take at McPherson, who after a field goal that he had missed was, pointing upstairs to the man upstairs. And Dave Portnoy is saying, I don't like that. The guy obviously has put his hand in the dirt a ton, led the SEC in sacks a couple of times, Dave Portnoy. He had the experience to say, hey, football players shouldn't do that. And McPherson had a very, nice tweet where he came back and said, win or lose, my father's got me. And I think that moments like that can be such a chance to go, oh, woe is me. I've had all this stuff go wrong. And this grown man with a beard who was on national television is shaming me for not missing a kick, but for being thankful after I missed a kick.
For reacting.
And in that moment, and again, like I try to be like fair and not go overboard with stuff, but that is just, I don't know how to say it, but kind of deplorable behavior, right? Where it's like, hey, like, this is a game at the end of the day. Like what this guy went through is real life. Like you got to be grounded in whatever you can find. And if it's your faith, awesome. If it's your family, awesome. But that dude went through more in not just the pressures of SEC football, but in his personal, kind of health struggle that I think is super, super, it's something to be lauded just as much as, the big, strong 6'7" pass rusher who could get after the quarterback and lift 500 pounds. Toughness comes in different ways. And so that being said, watching him, tie the SEC record for kicks for made field goals last week and a win for Auburn, I think was so massive after the whole Towns-Magoo situation last year. And I think that, even in a season for Auburn that's been mired in a bunch of these different struggles, getting the quarterback change, being able to lean on one of their best players, hard to say that with Cam Coleman on the field and Falk, but probably their third best player behind those two, right, is McPherson, and the ways they can affect the game, and seeing how much they missed him in 2024. So, yeah, I think this is just an easy lad of the week where it comes to, okay, not only the off the field stuff, overcoming that, but then the on the field stuff, and then the critiques and defending your character as a man and coming back and responding. I mean, it's probably the most complete lad of the week I think I've ever had.
Yeah, I can't imagine what it was like for that guy to go through it last year, and especially after he was so good the previous season, and to have so many of these setbacks, I'm sure that we didn't even see. Like that's the other thing that gets lost in the shuffle of, what a guy is going through in a it's a health injury. It's not, oh, he's, dealing with an ankle injury and he had a setback here, rehab's not going according to plan. No, like it's his body that's letting him down. And it's this thing that's outside of his control. And the mental toll that takes on you over the course of a year when you're thinking, man, I've got everything set up. Like I've got everything set up for me to be, a kicker that has a lot of success in the SEC, goes on to do things in the NFL. And I know I'm good enough to do this and I can't get out there and do it. You feel terrible for that guy. It probably was going through hell at so many different moments last year. And I'm sure, it was well documented talking about his struggles in the, the previous week against Mizzou and how that was just brutal, a brutal type of setback. And a different kind of setback than one that he dealt with the year prior. But yeah, you're right. Like to see him out there, just automatic, and help put the game away. They really needed him in that game where they just couldn't really finish drives, and was a big part of getting Auburn that first SEC victory of the season. So yeah, love to see Alex McPherson doing good things for a program that has not a whole lot to feel good about, if we're being honest.
Really quick, too, just to clean up, because I couldn't remember if he had Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, and I didn't want to quote that wrong. It's ulcerative colitis. Part of the reason is it's hard to say. And yeah, he had his large intestine removed. And so just like stuff you just never want to go through. And then to your point about his future, it's like, hey, man, his brother's an NFL kicker. Like, it's just so obvious to go, I know where this guy's headed. It's like the most one-to-one, like, okay, all American, all SEC, brother's already made it in the league at a different school. Like, here's your path is laid out for you. And like, that's why I compare him to Job, because these struggles came in, he held on to his faith, and now he's an SEC share of a record holder. And it's hard to see, where the future holds. Kicking can be so mercurial. We've seen so many guys, even SEC guys, that can't cut it in the NFL. But grittiness for a kicker, I think he's kind of all-time great.
Yeah, would probably have been easy for Hugh Freeze to bail on him. I know I've criticized his having too much faith in kickers and quarterbacks, and this is a guy that easily could have just been kind of written off, and instead they doubled down on him. They doubled down on the talent, and ultimately he's able to provide them with some big moments in that game. We're getting preachy in Lad of the Week today because Justin Fields, by now people have probably already seen kind of his post game moment. Talking about his faith after he gets the Jets their first victory of the season, a game in which it wasn't looking like he was going to play. Tyrod Taylor looked like he was going to be the guy. Fields had been benched. He dealt with the Jets owner, Woody Johnson, basically saying if we could complete a pass, we'd be looking a lot better. And just a dumb, bizarre, head-scratching thing for a bad owner to say. And
we're all looking for the guy who built this team. We're all looking for the guy who's seen the Jets struggle passing the football for my entire life.
What an idiot. What an absolute idiot. If you can be thankful of one thing today, be thankful, unless you're a Jets fan, that your owner isn't Woody Johnson, because that is a guy who does not get it. And I'm not saying Justin Fields gets it in every single way, but for him to be able to go on the road and win that game, first of the Aaron Glenn era, in Cincinnati for a Bengals team that felt like it had been turning the corner with Joe Flacco, quarterback, previous Lad of the Week, Joe Flacco, but the Bengals defense is just all sorts of basura. Great for Justin Fields, and great to see him kind of be vulnerable in postgame. Love it when athletes can be vulnerable. I'm not saying that every athlete has to share every detail of their lives or anything like that, but I have a certain level of respect for an athlete that plays a sport like that, wherein toughness is, obviously valued in a different sort of way. And to be able to get up to the post-game presser and say, yeah, like I was sitting in my closet, like praying and going, through these conversations with my best friend on the phone and clearly going through some stuff. And Justin Fields, as a Bears fan, I've watched Justin Fields go through some stuff. not all of which has been particularly good. That's why he's no longer on the Bears. That's why he's on his third NFL team. But you're reminded of the character of someone like him. And I remembered covering him in college. And I know that it did not start off particularly well at Georgia with the fallout. And, there were some moments I think that were really hard for him as a freshman. But I think this is somebody who's grown as a person. And I have a lot of respect for that. And he talked about how he feels like he's put in this spot to kind of handle a difficult situation. And I don't know that he's going to be the adult in the room every single time for this Jets team that's going to lose probably a whole lot more football games. But he was definitely the adult in the room on that day when they needed him to be, when their owner couldn't be. And people were even questioning if their head coach could be with the way that he's been managing games so far this season. So I love for good things to happen to Justin Fields. I do. And I really hope that even as a guy who didn't work out as a Bears first round pick, like I hope he just has all sorts of great moments like this. And I hope that he can have a long NFL career and at least provide some sort of inspiration in moments in which it looks like he's kind of been left for dead.
Yeah, it's kind of underrated, like the bad situations that Justin Fields has been put into. Georgia, I'd probably say, Gunnar Stockton's probably the first quarterback that they have just like managed, like this is our guy, we're going to invest in him, like start to finish. And it hadn't been this weird rocky, like whatever. And credit to them for doing that right now. But even back when Georgia was smoking guys, it was still kind of up and down. Can this guy find his spot? He has this great year, obviously, at Ohio State, but it's like, then it's like a fumble, which is out of his control. He's got the almost gets there in the natty. It's like, okay, we're getting places. And then, yeah, it's just respectfully. And again, hey, my team's right there. But for quarterback franchises, Bears, Jets is like, how do you overcome that, right? And so Steelers for a year, right? And but kind of in a weird role with the Steelers too. So not that, again, had a chance there, but it's just hard to overcome everything that he's had to deal with. So as a guy, I'm probably going to believe in until he's out of the league, just to be honest with you. Just a guy who I think just because of his athleticism and the big splash plays, the consistency, unfortunately, may never be there. But I'll root for him until the end because I think he's so fun and the NFL is better for having him.
Yeah, definitely fun. And the type of guy that you could, I think, in the future have on your bench. And if your starter gets hurt, all of a sudden that's such a different guy to have the game plan for. And who knows, if you have the right pieces in place, an offensive line that's pretty good at run blocking, an offensive coordinator that knows what he's doing, like you can win a game or two with Justin Fields at quarterback and catch a team by surprise. So yeah, but good to see him have that moment. Clearly it meant a lot to him. And the fact that his owner was speaking out against him was just such, I can't overstate it. How maddening that is to watch an owner come out and say that. And it's like, dude, this is your team. This is your team that you assembled. And I hope that, I think, it was Golick Jr. who tweeted, that's the first guy, the quarterback won the revenge game against his owner, his current owner. That just doesn't happen in sports. Just wild, man. Imagine an athletic director or something like that, came out and just threw a quarterback under the bus or something like that. If John Cohen is weighing in on Jackson Arnold's struggles, and it's just man, we'd be a much better team and probably feel a lot better about our head coach if we could actually, do something at the quarterback spot. What? We would skewer an athletic director if they did anything like that, or a university president coming out and saying that probably is even more so the higher role to do it. But Woody Johnson sucks.
Say what you will about Jerry Jones. He's done that to some defensive players. He's done that to some wide receivers, but I don't think he's ever done that to a quarterback. Now that you say that,
True.
I think that when they've made the move, he has supported the crap out of his quarterback to the point where it's almost a detriment. That's really wild. Yeah.
That's when you stepped in it, Woody Johnson, when we're praising the restraint of Jerry Jones. Yikes. Ugh, that's bad. Anyway, week 10 should be great. Watch the Sickos game. Watch the fourth quarter Sickos games. Do it. Promise. It'll be great. Please leave us a 5-star review. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch every episode of the Saturday Down South podcast. Follow us on Twitter at the SCS Pod, at SatDownSouth, at CJ Rivera, at Go So Hard. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.